what's so beautiful about your children? I can almost see aspects of you in them. Pindi is the fire, and that's the fire side of you. And that just comes in with the way in which you even address her energy. She's full of fire, so she understands. Notula's peaceful. You've got so much, and we'll get there. We'll get there and we'll talk about it. But I want us to talk about when you've left now and you find yourself in Mozambique. What happens then?
The journey itself from Swaziland to Mozambique, we were told that we'll be taken by a car and dropped in an area called Stegi. And we had to go through the sugarcane fields, and it was pouring. There was thunder. And I was the only girl amongst the males who were crossing, because we were now walking. We were dropped off by the car, and then we had to walk and walk and walk until we got to Mozambique. There was a house where we were kept, and again there, when you get to that house, you go back again to tell who you are, where were you born, where did you grow up, which schools did you go to, who you were friends, and so forth. And after that, we go to Matola, which is the house which was later bombed in the late 70s. And there was a house where we used to stay, and that's the house where we had Umam Flo, who's still alive, by the way, and she's more than 100 years old, bless her. And she was the matron of Matola House. That was a transit camp. All of us got there from across the country. Now imagine you growing up in Swaziland and you getting to a house where there's people from Tanzania, there's people from Soweto, there's people from some places in KZN. It's a potpourri of young South Africans who are dying to go and train and come back and carry out the struggle. That's where we had leaders like Ubabu Mabita, who used to talk to us most of the time. And that's where you had to make a choice between either going to school or joining Umkhonto Wesizwe so that you can be trained and come back to fight. So you can imagine the majority of those that were there are young people who are just wanting to come back and fight. But the ANC and the leadership of the time was already looking way ahead and saying, not all of you must go for the training. Some of you are still underage to go and do any military training. So they encouraged most of us to go to school. Those who had not finished school must go to Solomon Mahlangu Freedom College to finish their high school so that they can then be able to get scholarship. I couldn't decide anything else but either than to go to school. My grandmother was somewhere lurking behind, saying to me, I suffered to get you to school, and my grandmother could do anything to get us educated. And I think my daughters can also tell you that, because even when I left, there's nothing she didn't do to make sure that they still went to school. They finished school. So I couldn't do anything else but go to school in order for me to feel also a little bit of comfort that I was still doing something that my grandmother wanted me to do. One very important thing that Datuma Bida said to us at the time was that don't rush to go to MK. Go and study, you'll come back, you still find MK still there, because the struggle looks like it's a long journey before we are free. So go and study. When you come back, because you are still very young, you'll probably be much more matured. You'll be able to understand what the armed struggle is about, because the ANC never wanted to put people into the armed struggle who did not appreciate and understand what it is to be in the armed struggle. By the time I joined the ANC, I was already at college in Swaziland. Then I got to Tanzania, and because I had completed school, I then worked in the office of the principal as a secretary, just waiting to get my scholarship. And I got my scholarship to go and study in Moscow, and I studied what I wanted to study. I've always wanted to be a journalist in my life.
Do you want to swap seats now?
Yeah, we can swap seats. We can swap seats
easy now.
So that's why I ended up with getting the scholarship to go to Moscow and studied in Moscow. Journalism, I spent 6 years there. But there's something very interesting that happened while I was in Moscow. Part of what happened was when we all sitting together now as South Africans, All you're wanting to do is to study. You're focusing on your studies. And by the way, our medium of instruction was Russian. So we had to learn the language first. So I did history, I did geography, I did principles of journalism, I did philosophy, I did all that in Russian. But then there would be the most painful moments for us, Christmas time. Because under communism, Christmas was never celebrated, because that's religion. And on Christmas Day, you'd find yourself going and writing an exam, believe me, on Christmas Day. And that is what used to pain us. And that's when we used to come together as South Africans and say, well, even if we can go and write the exam, we can come together and just think of what is happening at home. And that's when it used to hit us. Where is home? What's happening at home? Where are the children? What's happening to the children? Under normal circumstances, I should have been doing what they're doing with their children now. So when I see them and I see them with their children, I see the reflection of what I could have done, but I'm not pained about it anymore. And the reason why I'm not pained by it is because I see the same love which I could have given to them, which I didn't have because I didn't have the appreciation of it at the time. I see that translated by them to their children, and that's what gives me peace. I believe, as Pindile rightfully says, that those were the sacrifices that needed to be made, and I think we have not healed. I think what we're doing here today is something that needs to be done with hundreds of other families, because I'm telling my story today. Mine is a story that ended beautifully in a way. I'm here at home with my daughters, my son, and their children. They're fine. There are other comrades that never got to that point. There are families who never received anybody back. There are families who didn't do what my family does for me. We still go to Tlazaje, Baslabele, I still have my spandla and all those things, you know. We still have my grandfather's relatives who still call upon us and take care of us and ask us if we are fine. I still have my brothers and their children. December time, we all come together. We still are a family. But the bottom line is that many of our own didn't get to that point. And so I think when Pindile says and Noktula says it was hard, but they understand and appreciate because they now live a better life. And you know, when Pindile says that, I'm taking myself back and I'm thinking, imagine if I had had them and I had remained in Swaziland and had never gone anywhere else. I wonder, where would I be today? Probably I would have been some woman married somewhere, waking up and going to the fields and scrubbing floors.
You wouldn't have this kind of fashion sense, so it would have been a disaster, wouldn't it?
Believe me, if I hadn't had the opportunity to leave, I don't think I would have also been able to give my children and my grandchildren, my husband, and everyone else around us. I don't think I would have given that kind of life that we live today. Because you see, when people complain, say, okay, you live in this house, is this your home? I'm like, yes, this is my home. Is this it? And I'm like, they don't get it. This that I'm where I am right now, if my grandmother and my grandparents would wake up and find me here, they would be like, girl, you've done it. Because for me, it's not about how big the house is. It's the fact that I can wake up in the morning and do what I want to do. They can wake up in the morning and do what they want to do. None of us had the opportunities to do that. My son can wake up in his own home and take care of his own child without calling mama and saying, oh, I don't have sugar, oh, I don't have nothing like that. We're living a life that I am 100% sure that my grandparents would have been proud of. Even though the ANC understood the role of women, to get women to be commanders and commissars it wasn't going to happen, because men are generally just used to the fact that they have to be the ones that have to be in charge, that have to be in control.